Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tea Time with Amy and Bev. It's going, sister. It's
It's going
going,
good. It's going. I will say it's going.
going.
Life is entertaining.
Life is lifing for sure.
Yes, I could probably sit back and watch my own freaking show unravel and eat the popcorn. Really, that's probably not even a bad idea. Now, a lot of things have been happening. I have spoke to one of my aunts on my biological father's side. I have reached out to my biological father a few times, and there's not a lot of strong communication or much of any communication, um, which it is what it is. And I also know that he had gone through some sort of a surgery and hasn't been really quite the same since that recently. So, but I reach out, but I went over and saw his sister, which is my aunt, obviously, and she gave me pictures of my dad when he was a little boy with my grandfather that I have a different perspective on, and that's what kind of where we'll go with things, perspectives. So my perspectives was that was the child molester, that was this, that was that, but there was more to a person than that. He was still, and I don't know how it was for his whole family, but you hear other different stories. Not that anybody said a single thing about him, but I got to see him, and from my adult perspective, I'm not afraid of him. I don't have any fear about him. I don't have any emotional reaction or any feelings about him at all whatsoever, which was pretty freeing for myself, honestly, because we get these ideas in our head or these perspectives or these stories that we circulate, and then that's all that that person or that thing could ever possibly be. And then when you step aside from it, it's like he was just another person that was being abused by somebody else. It was just another person that was looking for acceptance from somebody else. It was just another person. He was just another person that was in my experience for me to grow. And so I got to see my father growing up, and I got to talk to my aunt and ask her, like, how was he? And she said he was super shy, didn't communicate really well, and I'll have all these other perspectives. And then one of my kids said, well, he didn't have any problem, being shy and finding women or whatever, but it's like that was my mom's perspective. So I'm taking on my mom's perspective. Was my mom's perspective right? Who knows? It was her perspective. And it's like we take on all these ideas and beliefs from somebody else as if it's our own. We accept that those are the true answers. So from now, I'm in a space where I'd like to get to know my biological father and know what his life was growing up, know what his experiences were, know about him. And he's not in a space to communicate that, which is fine because then I get an opportunity to talk to my aunt. I get an opportunity to see the grandmother that thought that I was walking around and just shaking my butt, and I 8 years old or 7, 6. This is what happens when you behave that way. Well, but I got to see her in a different perspective. I got to see her as she was a beautiful woman. Like I got to see all these different things, and I got to paint. I can change my story at any time. This is my point for the whole thing. My perspective was that, and how many times have I said, and it's been recorded many times, I don't remember my childhood. Well, how can you remember every part of your childhood if your main focus is always on the trauma? And mine was. It wasn't on all the rest of the stuff. And I didn't realize that until I'm driving home on Friday and I'm talking to one of my daughters. I'm sending her a message, and I said, because her response was, well, you have a right to have those feelings. You know what I mean? The trauma, to have that response of the things that happen to me. And I'm not saying this works for everybody, but this is what I'm experiencing right now. And it's for me, it's very freeing. I'm driving home and I'm like not in a defensive place of this is why I am in communication, but I like to have the different perspectives. I said, because what if I always told you guys, I said, I'd like to know my mom without the traumas. I'd like to, because I didn't sit and have conversations with her about this stuff. And I said, but I can tell you, I remember being in a VW van bus and driving through the hills where the dairy was at and listening to, disco music and having a good time. I can remember going to the beach and my flip flops breaking, and it didn't matter that my feet were frying. You just kind of scooted to the next shady place. You didn't stay in that space of, oh my God, your daughter's feet were burning. Didn't you have an extra pair of shoes? Like there's so many bullshit things that you can come up with in your mind to feed that trauma, that victim, that all that perspective. As soon as I started telling her all these different stories, more and more stuff started coming forward. And I said, wouldn't it be nicer to know that story about me, or that story about my father, or that story instead of having the perspective that I've gone through my whole life because I learned to look at the traumas. I learned to look at being a victim. I learned to be in that space. I don't have to stay in that space anymore. So with all that being said, everything that I've experienced in the last week has been very freeing. It's not always comfortable because then I have to take a look at myself about behaviors and why I do certain things or when things come up inside of me. And you can't blame anybody else. There's nobody else at fault. So it's been quite a lot of growing. Some of it's been great, some of it's been uncomfortable, and some of it's been downright kind of shitty sometimes that you can't even catch your own breath to process things. But then you know that it passes. So there's a lot in that right there, but hopefully it was clear and made sense.
There is a lot in that. There's so many directions we could go. And you said that so it would be your grandmother, right? Your grandfather's wife.
Yes.
She she was the one you said was beautiful.
I never saw this picture of her, but yes, an absolute, it's because we get a perspective of somebody in our mind, and that's where they stay
Yeah.
in the suitcase that we carry around on our back all the time.
But is she the one that also like accused you of walking around shaking your butt at 8 years old being, and so what came to me, I just wanted to make sure I was hearing that correctly before I move forward with what I was going to say is, and this isn't where the conversation has to go, but I just wanted to say that from perspective, you're an innocent 8-year-old being a child, and her insecurity could see you as a threat through
Mhm.
jealousy because you're young and you're vibrant and beautiful in your own right and all the things. So she's seeing through her eyes, which is her perspective, through her own insecurity, that she may not be getting the attention that she needs or things like that, right? So when you think about perspective, all of us have it. You and I, every time we show up for for tea time, we have different perspectives. We're getting something out of it in our own way. And it's not always the same. It's might be similar, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to, we're not going to get done and then have the same experiences because the conversation is that we are going to hear what we need to hear, or we said something out loud that we needed to say out loud and heard it for ourselves. And then we're like, oh, and we've done that multiple times in our conversations. We're like, and I say it frequently, as I say this out loud, this is what I'm hearing back to myself. Um, so yeah, perspective is huge when it comes to interactions, especially relationships. Even your significant other, the person you live with, is you're seeing the perspective from one way and they're seeing it from a different angle. And unless there's communication, then there's going to be resistance, discord, right? So, um, I just wanted to kind of make that as a point of perspective from what you were saying. So,
100%. You're 100%. I would say, from my perspective, you're 100% on it. It's the truth, and we don't realize that's where we learned our people skills. We learned our people skills from that space, and so I don't remember if it was you or whoever. It was like when even like when you would see your parents. Not everybody got to see their parents fight. I got to see my parents fight occasionally, but never got to see how did they resolve that. What was the resolution in that? So it's like there's these tools that we didn't gain, and it's okay. But now I'm in this place where I'm open to receiving more information because I want to do and be better within myself. It's not even it's for everybody else too, but it's for myself because I don't, man, you just don't know until you know. You just don't know.
yeah, I had so for the audience, if this is your first time being with us, I didn't know my biological dad, and neither did Bev. And so, and then we both had experiences of being molested. So her and I have been walking this similar path. And so a lot of what she says resonates with me, even though we've had different journeys, they're similar. And wh- you bringing this up is it it amazes me, but I know it's divine timing and all the things because this past week I too had an experience of pulling up memories. And I had the experience of being molested at 14. And I went after that went into a very deep depression. I've talked about this multiple times in our videos of from 14 to 35. It was suicidal thoughts almost on a daily basis. And I didn't want to be here, obviously, but something was stronger in me that kept me going. And years ago, when I started my healing journey and was working through the mental and emotional turmoil, um, one of the things I was very, very, very angry about was that nobody ever asked me if I was okay. After it came to the surface of what had happened, nobody ever asked me if I was okay. Nobody asked me what happened. Like I had so much anger in me about that. Through my healing process, I came to terms with that as soon as somebody finds out information like, and this experience happened, first of all, there's denial. There's no way this person could have done that. Okay. So they're in their denial, they're in their own grief, in their own shame, they're in their own guilt because they maybe intuitively knew but didn't say anything, or intuitively knew um and ignored all the signs, or you know just put a blind eye to it. Whatever it was, they went into their own story because of their perspective, and couldn't be in a space to hear anything more. They couldn't hear the details. They couldn't hear what I was going through. And so I had to do a lot of healing around that, and forgiveness. Um, so a week ago, at the time this is being recorded, a week ago, uh, I was had an experience where some of this story was surfacing again, coming up. I left the experience, was driving home, and it came up again about, here we are 21 years later from being 35 and going through healing to 56. Still, what came up for me was, still nobody has ever asked me if I was okay. Nobody ever asked me what happened. But the beauty in it was there was no anger attached to it. The thought came up, and I'm like, yep, it's true. Nobody has ever asked me any questions, had any conversation, has had any other perspective. Like you're saying, you're getting different perspectives about these adults who raised or gave birth to you, raised you. Um, but it was just like, huh, interesting, but no anger. So just us having, and it happens almost every time we have these conversations, that we're living these parallel experiences. Similar things are happening with us, and then we get to come together and have these conversations and be like, oh yeah, me too. So yeah. So the perspective, coming back to, it was a perspective that I saw it through the eyes of a child being put through this traumatic experience and then living with it and never having the support from loved ones to move through it or anything. Like all my support was outside of the circle, the family, the friend circle. It was outside of that. And it wasn't through traditional therapy either. Um, so the perspective at that time was I was very hurt. I was felt abandoned again, abandoned by a biological father, then abandoned again because there was no support there for me. But they didn't have the capacity to be there to support me because they were living in their own turmoil about it, and their own mental and emotional struggles about it. Even wrapping their head around that anybody that they knew like that would even do something like that. So, you know. we all see something and experience through our eyes and from our uh, childhood programming, from our whole package of what we have, and then we process and experience through the information we have in our system. And I always use a computer as an example. A computer can only operate from the programming it has in it, the programs, the apps, and if it doesn't have the tools that it needs to do something you want it to do, you have to go get another program or app. So it's just like AI. AI started in this small capacity where it could only do so much output for you in a way that it knew how. But now, as people are, billions of people are using it on a daily basis, it's getting smarter and it's getting more precise, and the output today is so much different than it was 3 years ago. So we have to understand that about ourselves, that the what our package has, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, what we store in our body from the experiences we've had in our lifetime, we are operating from that programming. And because we're operating from that programming, we see situations and experience from a certain perspective, just like Bev was talking about. This is how I see it, but from her looking at me and us having these conversations and the words I'm saying, she's having a different perspective. This is how we operate. We are such incredibly interesting beings with all the tools and resources we have within ourselves of how we function on a daily, any moment, but on a daily basis, and interacting with other people. We're actually crazy. Like we're insane beings.
Wild. Wild is my word these days. Everything seems wild.
Wild.
And it's not even a word that I've ever used before, not frequently, but right now it's like, well, that's wild. Or the storm that we had, that was wild. Oh my God, that's a different perspective. That's wild. Like for me to even, if I could never have had this conversation the way we're having this conversation right now, from the perspective that I'm at, probably even 5 years ago,
No,
even 10 years ago, this like it's not even possible. But
no.
there's such a shift that happens, and it's on the other side of it, it's so freeing, and you get to paint a different picture. I don't have to sit and look at these people as if they're demons and horrible, miserable people. They were people. They were people doing the same thing that we're doing, not exactly because we're not carrying on the traumas, but we still have stuff. I have seen some things recently, and I would say that I had narcissistic tendencies,
Yeah.
quite honestly. I really would.
I just
But
said
of
that
course,
about myself the other day too.
that's funny. But it's true. But it's from my perspective, and it's like let's not get caught up in the label, but let's look at all the things, because when you look at all the things, it's like, okay, well, that's true. And now I'm receiving a different perspective. I can either get pissed off about the perspective that I'm getting, or I can recognize if I am getting pissed off, it's triggered something within me, because there is something within me that wants to be different, but that has been the path, that has been the process. And so that's what I've been looking at too. That's why I say some of the stuff that I'm looking at about myself is not, it hasn't been a walk in the park, but I can't condemn myself. I have to love that part of myself too. Know that I downloaded that information from somebody around me and thought that that was the way that I navigate the world. And I'm finding that's not the way that I navigate the world. And I'm not sitting here, like I said, I'm not going to condemn myself. I'm not abusing myself for those processes, but I'm looking at it and saying, okay, so now I'm questioning things. It gives me the opportunity to sit back and kind of listen a little bit more, feel a little bit more, not get so caught up in all the words and the terminologies, but to feel things. And it's not easy. This is all guiding me right to the heart, and I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing. To be quite honest with you, that's the truth. It's like everyone says you gotta let your heart lead. Well, mother, I'm trying to do that, but I don't know exactly what that means. So it's like my soul's telling me this is the process, and then I'm trying to figure out how do I fit into that process? Like how do I what does that look like? How do I do that? And so the only way I can say to navigate through that is continue asking questions. Notice the things that show up in your experience. I'm really sitting and really focusing and trying to feel even the smallest vibration, the smallest palpations, the little things in the chest area, just recognizing it because I can feel other areas more pronounced, and I am noticing that is shifting. I am noticing that I can feel it, that it's always been there, but it's like we shut ourselves down from our experiences, and there's no reason to do that because I'm safe. I am safe to express myself. I am safe in my environment. I'm safe.
Yeah. Yep. Um, when you're talking about, being an adult and you're handling things differently, seeing things differently, one of the practices I learned from You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, she has a tool in there in her book, of you think about or just say a parent or an adult. So if you think about your adult mom or your adult dad, the book right there. Um, but then um, visualize them 10 years younger. And then you keep going through that process and you keep visualizing them younger and younger and younger until they get into like 5 years old. And imagine them as a 5 year old and kind of thinking about the things they had to endure at a very young age in their childhood to be who they were when they were an adult raising you. It's just like giving you that different perspective and then seeing them as they get younger. And then from there, you go like each year, 4 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old to infant where they're crawling. And then I believe she uses a stage. So then she says, you just see them as this little infant who is happy and playful and has no concerns, no worries, and then they just crawl away. They crawl off this, away from not like off the stage, but to off the stage. And when I went through that process, I was thinking, wow, and that's where the compassion came in for me was what because I had two very emotionally and mentally abusive stepdads. And it was like, wow, to think about what they had to endure for them to become an adult and be who they were, to act the way they acted or believe the way they believed. For my mom, the things she had to endure as a child and then grow up and have the lack of self-confidence and self-esteem that she had, and the lack of self-love. Even though this is like self-love was not like a coined word back then. Nobody talked about self-love. It wasn't a daily conversation. Now today it is because we've learned so much and with all the teachers and authors and such that we've had before us. And so she didn't know all those. And so all the things that she had to endure to be who she was an adult and then a child raising a child. She was 20 when she had me and she's still, you think about your own kids now and being 20 years old and it's like, good God, don't have kids yet. Like, wait. But it's at 20 we think we're an adult, but we're still very young in our thinking and in our emotions and all that and her raising a child. So when you go through that process, I feel that's when you really get the perspective of um, they, each person has had their own childhood, their own perspectives about their parents or the adults who raised them, or whether it's foster care or adopted, like it doesn't matter that there were adults around them, people around them where they learned things from. So then they develop their own way of seeing through certain eyes, through a certain filter, to uh, take with us, right? We all take it with us into our adulthood. So, no doubt my mom was doing the best she could raising me, most of the time being a single parent and then getting into abusive relationships. Like she was doing what she thought she could do to provide for us back then. Like it's total survival mode. And back in those days, it was, you're supposed to have a man in your life. You're supposed to be this family, a man, a woman, and a child, children. Um, and she was working two jobs at it sometimes to support us. So yeah, and a lot of times we as children, like you said, we don't see the arguments, or we see the argument, but we don't see the resolution. Um, we don't see the whole gamut of the interaction between two people a lot of times. Some of it happens when we're not home, some of it happens behind a bedroom door, and we don't see the whole story. We only get bits and pieces. And then we hear the conversations. We're not, like my mom and my grandmother having conversations. So I get bits and pieces there. Um, and so I develop my own story, but that's all it is. It's a story because I don't have all the details. And how could I? How could a child or your friend, like we're friends, but I don't have all the details of your life every single day. So I don't know. I can make a story up, but 99.99% it's going to be false. None of it's going to be truth. It's my story. So every day we are living in from a perspective of stories that we've created within ourselves. And that's kind of what you started out with. You had these stories about your biological father and your aunt, your grandmother, your father, your grandfather. Like you had these stories that you created as a child. And I did the same thing. I did it too. The only story I know to be true is my own story, not anybody else's. Doesn't matter if it's my mom, my dad, stepdads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, cousin. I don't know their stories. I know my story. So as an adult, like, we get caught up in the drama of everybody, all the dirt on people and what's going on with them. And a while back I heard somebody say, it's not my story to tell. I was like, damn, that's true, right? It's not my story to tell because I'm not going to tell their story the way they're going to tell their story because I'm going to tell it from my own inner perspective of what I think is right or wrong. It's their story to tell. Let them tell it.
Yeah. Because we
And I
start filling
also,
the blanks. We fill in the blanks with whatever
right.
experienced.
And I also learned like if I hear something about Bev, instead of sharing that story around, I'm going to go to Bev. Hey, Bev, I'm a little concerned. I'm hearing these things. Is this true? Not true? Just letting you know. And she can validate it or say it's none of your damn business. Take a hike. I don't need to talk to you about this, right? It's her choice. But even so, it is still not my story to tell. So that's what we talk about gossip. There's gossip. Well,
Yeah.
you're telling a story that's not true. And then when you hear a story from somebody and then you take that story and tell your part of it and put in your pieces of details, right? Now that's how the story changes and grows and gets out of control and then turns south real fast. The more people that tell the gossip, and it gets so far from the truth, and then we're so convoluted in our perspective about that person that that's very damaging to everybody involved, even as somebody who's doing the gossiping. That's damaging to me and how people could see me. So it's not my story to tell.
No, not my story to tell. I hear you. I hear you. Because then we're only adding our own perspectives on things or how we heard it or how we felt it or whatever. And it's like and then when you add in the fact that we're all master creators, is that what you were you going to create from? No, probably not. 99, 100%. 100% no, it's not where you want to
Thousand
create from. Let's
percent.
be real. Let's be real. 110% is not where you want to create from. It just isn't.
Yeah. So really, I would say for anybody listening is mm, maybe sit with your perspectives, right? So here's a good example. I use this in like classes and group coaching is when you have a mother and a father and they have a child. That first child's experience with those two adults is going to be 100 times different than the next child. So the second child now has not only the mother and the father, but they also have the sibling, the older sibling. So that second child has a completely different experience with these people. And then if there's a third child, now that third child has the parents and the two or two older siblings and then them. And typically what happens, not always, is the more children you have, the less attention each child gets. Because now the family has grown, the parents are really focused on providing for the family, right? There's different dynamics with each as the family grows. Then I mean, I witnessed it myself in my own family that then the children, the three children or six children, doesn't matter how many children, all grow up into adulthood and all have different beliefs, habits, perspectives, like all the things are different. And then everybody's like, but they all grew up in the same house. They all were raised the same. No, they weren't. That's your perspective that they were raised, quote unquote, the same. Yes, they grew up in the house. No, they did not grow up the same. And I taught that to a lady. She attended one of my retreats, and I was teaching about that, about perspective and how we all have different perspectives, even in being raised under the same roof, because she was struggling with her siblings. They thought they didn't think the same. They saw things differently. They always fight, like they didn't have a good relationship. And when I went through this process, it like this ginormous light bulb just went off. And she's like, oh my gosh. From that point, her relationships with her siblings started mending because she gained a different perspective of how they were seeing things versus how she was seeing things. And a lot of times, the older sibling ends up being the parent to the other siblings. So the other siblings, the younger ones, don't really know the parents because the older sibling steps in to take care of the kids while the parents are busy, in survival mode trying to provide for the family. So then they're getting their programming, so to speak, from the older sibling, where the older sibling got her programming from the parents and has put it through her own filtering system and now has put her ideas, thoughts, beliefs, habits onto the younger kids. So yeah, they're all under the same roof, but they're all having a different experience.
100%. And that's why it's so important for us to be open to shifting, not being so steadfast or standing so firm in our beliefs that we're missing out on truth, honestly. And I shouldn't say truth, but you're missing out on perspectives because that's flexible as far as I'm concerned in a lot of ways because it's from so many different perspectives, but being open to see. And I never thought about it that way either, but you're 100% right. We don't Everything shifts, everything changes. And my God, that'd be like me saying that I raised my kids exactly the same. Well, I couldn't raise them exactly the same because I changed. I'm a person that changed. Otherwise, I mean, even if we're a curmudgeon and we're unhappy and miserable, there's still going to be bits of us that are going to change for each individual that comes into our experience. So it's just being open to the perspectives. It's just being flexible. It's just being not so steadfast in these ideas that you're right, because being right doesn't always make sense in the perspective. Sure, I could have been said that I was right about my that perspective. I was right, but it's not. It doesn't feel good. So if it doesn't feel good, then it's an opportunity for me to look at it and kind of explore it a little bit more, and then realize, man, I could feel so much more free by letting this stuff go, and I did, and I do.
Yeah.
My dad didn't do anything wrong. He was a child. He was a child. He didn't.
Yeah.
From what I can feel from him, he totally loved my mom. I don't know what their relationship was like. I don't know. But I can tell you from my perspective as being an adult and what I could feel from him, he completely loved her, was in love with her, and was hurt by her from his perspective. He hasn't said those words, but that's what I could feel.
And he did what he thought was best in that moment
Yeah.
based on his information, knowledge, and wisdom at that time. So thinking about at that time, it's his age, it's his upbringing, it's the era, the generation. It's like there's so many factors to an experience, just one experience. So, yeah, for him, he did what he thought was appropriate at that time. Now,
Yeah.
if they became older, they're going to shift and change. And if your mom was still present in the physical body and they got together, it would be like a brand new relationship because they're both different.
Mhm.
And that happens a lot. High school sweethearts get together, then they're apart for several years. And then later in life, 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, they come back together and they're like, it's like magic because they have to go through their own life experiences. You know, I had a couple people in high school who were just amazing. But I was so broken and hurt and going through all these things that the relationship would have never have worked. So it just, even if we would have gotten married, it would never have worked because I had too much going on within myself that it would have hindered the relationship. And I know that now. Back then, I was crushed. Today, I'm grateful. So we're all doing what we think is best in the moment, based on our perspective, based on the way we are seeing through our own eyes, our own filter. And you can have compassion for yourself. Not only other, but you got to have compassion for yourself too, because you have endured so much. I've endured so much, and I've learned and I've grown and I've changed and I've not the same person today as I was 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago, right? So we're depending on staying a victim to your circumstances and the perspectives that you developed over the years of people. Um, when those shift and change, you see through the eyes of compassion and forgiveness and love and empathy that you just it changes your whole system and you operate differently and then you keep moving through life with that new system. It's just a different world.
And there's no
And
room
then
for judgment. No room for judgment.
and then and then we no longer exist in the physical body. How do you want to live? Like it really comes down to how do you want to live? How do you want to live this life?
Yeah.
So, wow. I think that was pretty good conversation and pretty deep actually when if you really want to dig into it deeper. It takes some time to sit with it, to maybe write journal about it, write it out, get conventional therapy, get a coach, get a mentor, just something that's going to help maybe shift your perspective or change your programming or help you change your belief system or, you know, something that's going to help you ease the turmoil, the traumas and dramas that you've been storing in your body. So Bev and I come together because we obviously, from the beginning of this conversation, we are having similar experiences on a regular basis. And we come together, we have these conversations not to compare, but to share. We share because we know other people in the world are having these same, not same, similar experiences and don't know what to do with it. So when we have these conversations, it might help somebody else. So be resourceful, share the video, share the link, share the content, have the conversations, and help somebody else with move through whatever it is that there might be that they are trying to move through and heal or at least shift. So there's some ease within their system, within their thinking process, within their daily life that they feel that sense of relief that it's okay and there is tools and resources to help them move through it. So you can find us on many platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spreaker, Spotify, Podcast Addict, and YouTube. Just share it. You don't even talk about it. Just say, you know what, I think this might help you, and just share the link. Leave comments, questions, leave topics you might want to have us talk about. We don't plan our conversations. They're very organic. We just turn the camera on and start talking, and it goes where it goes. So any final words from you, Bev, before I wrap this up?
I would say take the time to breathe. If you're noticing that you're constantly always busy, keeping yourself busy, finding, because we can always find things to do, it's a distraction from these opportunities that you can have within yourself to free yourself from the stuff you're running from by keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. Tea Time with Amy and Bev. We'll see you next time.